Welcome to Podcast at Boatwright. I am Lucretia McCulley, Director of Outreach Services at Boatwright Library. Our author today is Paul Achter, Associate Professor of Rhetoric. Dr. Achter is the author of a recently published article in the Quarterly Journal of Speech entitled Unruly Bodies, the Rhetorical Domestication of 21st Veterans of War. This article focuses on the injuries sustained by veterans of wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and how state voices and mainstream news discourse talks about veterans' bodies. Paul, thank you for joining us today. And to start off our conversation, what inspired you to write on this particular topic?
Thanks, Lucretia. For a number of years, I've been working on a larger project and been looking at with students war rhetoric. And when most people think of war rhetoric, we probably think of presidential speeches, and those are important. And I also started thinking about the visual rhetoric of war. In particular, I'm not so interested as in speeches that advocate war or dissent from war necessarily. I'm interested in strategies that have been used to maintain war, rhetorical strategies of maintenance. And I was inspired by an image of President Bush running with two veteran amputees in about 2006. I wondered why the president would risk this kind of photo, because it seemed to associate him with what I call unruly bodies, with bodies that showed very efficiently and very emotionally the costs of war. When I started looking further into images like this, I started to notice that very often injured veterans were shown exercising. So I talk about that as a way of normalizing war. Images of exercising veterans, then, I realized were a way to sort of recuperate their bodies and to make the rest of us feel as though everything was going well with the war, these guys were recovering, and things were fine.
All right, well, thank you. And how did students contribute to the development of this project?
Yes, students in my classes saw drafts of the paper. They heard me give a presentation on it several times over about 2 or 3 semesters. I generally seek them out for feedback. I rehearse in front of students anytime I'm going to give a talk about some of my work at a conference. And usually what happens is that after I talk about my research, it opens up conversations with a few students. They start sending me emails, ask follow-up questions, launch new research projects. And so I find this very helpful for sharpening my ideas.
And do you see ways that the University of Richmond community could use this project to address various social issues on campus?
Well, this is the real difficult question that my work leads to. And my students here have seen their government waging war for half their lives. And they're well aware of some of the costs to people. They know also economic costs that are now affecting job prospects. So for many students, these wars are sort of the moral issue of their time. Many of them, I should say, I think are pretty unsettled by what they see as a contradiction between their government's policies and their government's stated values. So I would hope that in teaching this in a media and war class, that it's helped make them a little bit more critical of what they're seeing and hearing in regard to war in the United States.
Thank you. Those are really good thoughts. And how would you envision undergraduate students beyond the University of Richmond using this research for their study and research?
Well, I think there's a lot of war rhetoric to talk about. So, for example, in my war and media class this semester, I had students working on the issue of sexual harassment. I had students working on the issue of how post-traumatic stress disorder gets talked about in the media. I want to help them unmask and sort of demystify how various representations, whether that's language or images, how these things are used to consolidate power, how they are used to keep war going, and I hope it will also help them see ways out, ways that they can use rhetorical practice to push for different policies.
And our last question: how did library services support you in your writing?
Well, library services supports me all the time, whether that is working from home and having books sent to my office box, or just having such a huge number of databases available I never struggle to get anything that I need, and that is a huge compliment to library services. More specifically, I meet with Laura Horn Pop usually at the beginning and at the middle, and maybe one other time in a project to make sure that I'm touching all kinds of bases in terms of the research, and so I always have a pro on my side when I can.
That's great, and thank you.
Thanks.
So, thanks, Dr. Achter, for your conversation today. Unruly Bodies, the Rhetorical Domestication of 21st Century Veterans of War, is available in Boatwright Library in both print and digital formats.
You've been listening to Podcasts at Boatwright. Your host was Lucretia McCulley. Our guest today was Dr. Paul Achter. Editing and production was performed by Andy Morton. Visit Boatwright Library on the web at library.richmond.edu.